All right, well, thank you everybody. We've got hopefully wired in. Can you guys hear me at this level? Okay, it's hard to know what the acoustics are up there. We've got everybody online from Trussville, Gurney, Stand Steady, and Quick Boost. So they're all watching what we're watching, and we're recording this. So if anyone remote has, I'm looking at you guys, but talking to the remote folks, if anyone remote has tech issues, I would say message to Tristan, and she can get that looked into, but hopefully everyone's receiving. We got an initial confirmation that the other offices could hear us and see us. So, welcome, in-person company meeting. Who knows when the last, yeah, exactly. Good to clap for that. Who knows when the last one was? A long time ago, right? I think it would have been January of 19. We're talking about the end of the first two quarters. So it's been a really long time. I'm really excited to be doing this in person with you guys and in our great new offices, and for the remote people, hopefully you get a chance to see this pretty soon. Wrong way. Good, we got some new technology, so bear with me. I'm not used to having the mic either. Agenda, we're gonna go over 21 results. And again, fiscal years are strange here if this is your first company meeting. Our fiscal years run July to June. So we're now in fiscal year 2022. We've just entered that. So they run a little bit ahead of what generally the calendar year is. Then we're going to talk about our new fiscal year plans and goals. We're going to talk about the ERP. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning Software. It's the software that's basically Sage that we use today that is going away. And hopefully there are no tears shed over that. I don't think there will be. But we're going to go over that. That's the most important project we're going to do this year, is to replace that system. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We had Tim lined up to do that, and he is deathly ill today. So Sophia has stepped up and is going to go over those slides. So we'll give her a warm welcome when it's her turn to jump up here with about 2 hours notice, I think you got. All right, so that's the agenda. Oh, I'm going the wrong way already. That's the agenda, and these slides, I'm going to put out a PDF of these and with a link to everyone. So if you don't feel you need to take notes, if you can't see them perfectly well, you'll have the ability to look at it on your own. Great year, and it's almost weird to call it such a great year because so much bad stuff happened in the year. So it's a really weird one. When I was planning on how do I talk about this, I struggled with it, quite honestly, because it's a year where a lot of people had a lot of hardship and a lot of challenges, and both personal and career was tough for everybody. So the crazy part of it is, as you guys know, we were busy as you can ever believe. We had an amazing year from a results standpoint, and did all that while all this craziness was going on. So just really quickly, what were our goals for the year? I'm going to talk about the goals and then the results, and then we'll go into 22. So goals for the year, what we set out to do was $99.6 million in sales, which was pretty significant growth, 11.5%. From a profit standpoint, achieve the budget, a 10.2% increase year over year, and then make capital investments. So capital investments are buildings like this place, equipment that we do, tooling, research and development, designs of products. So things we can call assets, basically, that we can expense over a longer period of time. Big investments that we make. So how do we do? Well, we crushed it. And again, it's strange for me to talk about crushing it in a year that had so much hardship and challenges for people, but from a results standpoint, we did awesome, and we should be proud of those results, and at the end of the day, really happy about what we accomplished given what was going on. So we set out to do $99.6 million in sales, and the result, we did $110 million in sales, and you guys know that we sent out a little award trinket to kind of commemorate when we hit $100 million, which is a pretty cool milestone. In a minute, I'll show the slides of where our revenue has grown over the years, and it's pretty amazing how quickly we've accelerated into this $100 million milestone. $100 million means a lot. There's nothing magical from 99 to 101, but $100 million companies operate at a different level. They have a general drive and a general operational mentality that gets bigger and bigger and more professional, and that's where we are, and we should feel proud of that. It was a lot of work to get here. Crushed the sales budget and 28.6 growth from the prior year. So the prior year we were at 86.1 million, and we got to 110.6. It's just amazing the progress we had. I don't know, our lights are timing out over there. So next slide. From a profit standpoint, we really crushed that budget too. And we should. If we crush the sales budget and we've got our overhead, buildings and people and things like that fixed, we should be able to really crush the profit budget. And we did. We crushed it by 21.6%. 38.1% profit growth over last year. So that's ridiculous. From a profit growth standpoint, there are very few companies that can say that they're making that kind of profit improvement. It's just amazing, amazing results. And especially when you think about what we were planning on doing, increasing it from year over year by about 10%, to come up with 38% is it's fantastic, amazing results. And we should all be really proud of those. And then from an investment standpoint, we kind of crushed that one too. I think everyone's pretty happy with the office here. I know we've had a few challenges with plumbing and some pest control, but we've worked through those, and I think we've got those resolved for the most part. But we made a big investment in the Waukegan offices, as you guys that work here know. As you guys that are on remote offices will find out when you get a chance to visit here. Huge investment in building out the office space into the warehouse space and creating an environment that can really hopefully attract and keep talent and make people happy about where they work. We also did some pretty big investment in Trussville. So our Trussville warehouse, the break room had no plumbing. I mean, literally you had to go other places to get water and things like that. It was not a good environment, and it had been that way for a long time. So in working with Davis to really plan that out, he'd been pushing in Ed year over year to get that improvement done, and we finally got that done this year. So I haven't seen it myself yet, but I hope to soon. And so we made some pretty significant investment in Trussville, more in the office space, restrooms, break rooms, and things like that. And then we made a lot of investment in R&D tooling. We've done a lot of sidetrack tooling. We've done a lot of new tooling for our plastic carts, and then a lot of IT investments, some of which gets capitalized as well. So right on with our capital investment goals as well. So it's just a pretty amazing year. The challenges are obvious. This is just kind of the top three worst ones, or the biggest challenges. When I was looking at putting this presentation together, I kind of went through what are some good images or pictures to use or things like that, and there's a lot of stuff out there. Don't do that. I don't recommend it. Like 2020, was it a good year? Was it a bad year? There's a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of social stuff. There's just a lot. So I looked at it from the perspective of our business, what really challenged us from a business perspective, and I think these were the big three. What do we do about them is the amazing thing. And I first want to call out actually three warehouse teams. So we've got the team in Gurnee, the team in Trussville, and the team in Dallas. And while we switched the office to work from home, and that was tough, and working at home with kids, imagine the warehouse teams. No option to work from home, no option to ever not be there, no option to not wear a mask when you're not around other people. They're always around other people. They're working in very, very difficult conditions. None of our warehouses are air conditioned. One's in Dallas, one's in Alabama, super hot, super difficult conditions to be working in. So I'm amazed at what our warehouse team did throughout, especially the pandemic. And then when you add on top of that the cyber incident, and we don't want to write down that it was an attack, but it was an attack. It was a cyber attack from an outside party. So I'll say that. I don't want to necessarily write that down and document that, but those are challenging times to have to work through. And when we think about how much of a challenging year it was for us here in the office, or in the Stand Steady office or the Quick Boost office or the Trussville office, I wanted everybody to really think about the warehouse teams and how much of an added burden it was on them, and they did just an amazing job. I think we should all give them a big round of applause. In addition to that, some pretty amazing stuff that we all did. So we moved the office staff, and the IT team did an amazing job. I still hear people talking about it, even just yesterday. Someone was saying, it was just insane to think that one day I was here doing my job, and then literally the next day I had a laptop at home and I could do my job completely remote. And they didn't even have a laptop the day before, the day before they left the office. So I remember that week that we were thinking, we're probably going to have to move to remote working, and looking at Tim, and Tim was kind of like, how's that going to happen in a week? Or what ended up being 4 days. But they got it done, and I think a pretty amazing job. And especially, it was especially tough for everyone to get that transition done, and challenging to get their home office or home environment set up so that they could get through work. Imagine what it was like, the burden on that IT team. So really appreciate the IT team and everyone that did that hard work to make sure it happened. From a pivot product standpoint, I think one of the other biggest things we did this year was we did a really good job of pivoting some products. So we've sold millions of dollars in acrylics in the first 6 months of even having that product. I mean, that product didn't exist prior to early March. We hadn't even thought about really doing an acrylic line. We had a couple of acrylic products and some suds dividers, but we really didn't have a focus on acrylics. We developed an entire new product category or subcategory in a very short amount of time, identified a domestic supplier to get that product in faster, to start selling faster, and then transition to an import supplier to pick up the slack. I mean, we literally went from zero to multiple millions of dollars in sales in 6 months. And we used to say, when I first came in here, everyone used to say, it takes us a year to launch a product. We can't really get a product from an idea through all the different steps that have to take to get it through production, and then get it into our warehouse environment, and then get it out through our sales channels. So to have something that happened in less than half of that time, what we previously thought was impossible, is a pretty amazing accomplishment. I'd also call out the Quick IQ pivot. So Quick Boost has really done a good job at reinventing themselves. When you think about Quick Boost, their two primary targets shut down during COVID. The sales were not interested, no one interested in talking to them about doctor's office, patient waiting area, mobile charging. Anyone who's going into a doctor's office didn't want to touch anything during COVID. Their other biggest customer targets were schools and public charging areas in like libraries or elementary or secondary or colleges. No one was doing mobile charging in them, and they all shut down. So Quick Boost had to very quickly say, how are we going to continue to sell the products we have? Looked at their Brightbox technology, which basically connected charging lockers together in an electronic portal, and then connected that with the hardware that they had from a just pure locker standpoint and charging locker standpoint, and created this Quick IQ product, which is already a $1 million plus seller, and we have a lot of hopes for the future for that product. And then Edge Power. Edge Power, a year ago, or prior to COVID, we were thinking we're going to have to devalue it. We had this great product idea of having power wherever you want it with a battery attached to a desk, and nobody wanted it. Nobody was buying it. We thought maybe people don't understand what it really is or how it works. But we had millions of dollars in inventory of that product, and it really wasn't moving at all. And then something clicked, and the initial leads were really around schools and being able to have power in different areas outside of traditional classrooms. But it's really clicked, and we've been out of stock in Edge Power for months now. And we can't get enough in to sustain the demand that we have. It's a great pivot story. One of the other things we did is we went heavy on inventory. So, Paul, our new CFO, has come in and said, holy cow, we're heavy on inventory. We have a lot of inventory. And I keep saying, it's okay, we made that decision. It's hard to understand now because as sales are slowing down, we have a lot of inventory. But we had the discussion in a lot of calls, especially among the leadership team and Janessa and the purchasing team around, there's a lot of small companies out there that can't get product from China or Asia when COVID was really starting out. And we made the decision that we're going to be heavy on inventory. We're going to order in. We've got access to capital through our ownership from EBSCO, and we're going to make the decision to try to outlast some of these other competitors. And it worked. All throughout last spring and summer, company after company was going out of stock on desks and tables and traditional products that we sell. We stayed in stock. Now, some of you work in the brands might think, well, we were out of stock on this and this and this and this. Everybody was, but we lasted in a lot of products a lot longer than almost anyone else did. And that was an advantage that we had. We said that's our biggest advantage right now is we've got access to capital. We don't have to worry about how we're going to make payroll if we have to spend a lot of money to get more product coming in to stock up. Because we're owned by EBSCO and we have the access to money to make good long-term decisions. So we did that. So one of the smartest things we did is invested heavy on inventory. One of the biggest challenges we're going to have this year is how do we sell out that inventory? But that's the 2022 story. And I think one of the more amazing things is we kept the business running manually for weeks. So for some of our businesses, it was only a week and a half during the IT outage. And I call it the IT outage. Again, IT didn't do anything wrong. It was a cyber attack. IT did everything right to get it back to the way it should be. But we had this IT outage that we like to call it, and we ran the business manually for weeks. And for the Luxor business especially, it was multiple weeks. It was really a month, and then it took, I would say, multiple months to recover from what had happened and catch up with all the manual transactions. a lot of companies, if they have to do that, they'll go out of business. They won't be able to ship orders. They won't be able to figure it out. They won't be able to invoice and collect cash. And for some companies, if they're running right at the edge, that they won't make it through a situation like that. Again, we did, and it was really impressive. Huge win for us. So I just thought I'd call out, looking back at the year, this is something that David Walker had recently sent out, and I thought he's a better writer than I am, so I figured it'd be better to just show his words rather than try to say it myself. The commitment, adaptability, and resolve is what really struck me as when I think about what happened during the last 12 months and really what have we done as a team. Those are the things that have really stayed with me. The good news is for everyone is that this is true. The 21 profit at our level and also at the EBSCO level is historically higher than it's ever been. So what does that mean for you? That means it's great news. Like the profit sharing plan is going to be a great message. I can't wait to give it. I have no idea what it is, so don't ask me. I don't know yet, but it's going to be great. All I know is just what you see here. It's past a previous historical high, and for people that have been here, we've had some pretty good years with that profit sharing. So it's great news. And then I wanted to share one that someone sitting here sent me. I'm not going to call them out, but this choked me up a little bit. I'll just let you read that. So I've had friends, I'm sure you guys have friends who are in companies that didn't make it through this. They had layoffs, they were out of work, they're on tough times. We're really lucky to be in a situation we're in, and this is a good email to get last week. All right, 2021. Here, I'm just going to run through the results really quickly because I've kind of given you the highlights already. So Luxor overall, here's our total sales achieved. Here was the prior year. So you can tell huge increase from prior year and a huge increase. This column is the budget column. So huge increase from prior year, huge increase over the budget. Lot achieved. Again, not everyone's hitting on all cylinders. The Suds team and the QuickBoost team have had some challenges with achieving the same level of growth, and we're working with both teams very aggressively to put things in place to help that. And quite frankly, every department in the building is working with Suds and QuickBoost to try to figure that out. We've got IT working on things, we've got purchasing working on things, new product development, et cetera. So I feel very confident that some of the misses that we had here in this year will not happen in 2020, fiscal 2022. Here's another slide. Obviously, you can tell we've got a new CFO in town because his slides are a lot cooler than my slides were. So just a different way to look at it. So if you look at overall sales for the year, total Luxor, this was over budget by 11%, over prior year by 28%. This just breaks it out by brand. So Luxor, Suds, Stand Steady, and QuickBoost. Where did those over or under last year or plan come in? And then this is kind of a walk forward slide. So if this is the prior year where we made, in fiscal year 20, where we made 86 million in sales. This current year that just closed, we did 110 million in sales. Where did the delta come from? So it's kind of a walkover slide. Is that what you guys call it, a walk-through? Waterfall slide. And then same thing for kind of where the growth drivers come from. So just two different ways to look at a similar type of slide. I think this one's, once you learn how to kind of read that from the prior year to this year and what things impacted it up or down, it kind of gives you a good feel for where the changes are coming from. And it takes the total change and really breaks it out by brand, which I think is helpful for everyone to see. Here's my favorite slide. I used to call it the hockey stick slide. I don't know what we're going to start calling it because there's going to be more growth years than not. So it'll be maybe the reverse hockey stick, or we'll have a new name for it. But this is going back from 2004 to 2021. So this is all actuals. This is what really happened. This is sales. So and they've taken out intercompany just to kind of keep it neutral. So as you can tell, from 2004 to really 2014. It went from 17 million to 17.4 million, and there were some ups and downs, but it was pretty flat for a long period of time. 2014, which coincides with adding like Stand Up Desk Store, for example, or the start of Stand Up Desk Store, and then also Stand Steady acquisition, QuickBoost acquisition, you can really see that aggressive growth. So from that period, 2014 on, averaging 30% growth a year. That's just amazing, amazing growth. That's the kind of company you want to work for. That's the kind of company that's never even thinking about laying people off. It's never thinking about how we're going to get through the year. It's never thinking about where's the cash going to come from. We've got exceptional growth here and such momentum, to use the EBSCO term for momentum. There's such good momentum here. Our challenge is always we have too many good ideas. How do you prioritize them? We have too many good things to give our awesome people. Like, we need to find more awesome people. Those are the kind of challenges that we have, and those are the kind of challenges that for a company that I would want to work for is always thinking about those things. Those are all good things to have to figure out. They're not easy, but they're good to have to figure out. Profit results. So looking at overall profit achieved. So again, this is the similar slides where that was 2020. This is the budget for 21, and this is what we actually achieved for 21. Amazing, amazing profit results. This breaks it out by brand, and as you can see, the Luxor reseller brand contributed a huge amount of the profitability, much further than what we had ever planned or anticipated, and really did a great job in contributing to the overall profit achievement. The biggest percent, without even a question, comes from that Luxor reseller team. So everyone should be really happy and proud with the results that they had. And again, Stand Steady typically has been year over year, but really focused on profitability again this year and drove it up as a higher percent than the prior year. And as mentioned, SUD struggled on reaching the top line in terms of sales, and then that drove down their ability to reach the profitability. If you don't make those sales, it's almost impossible to reach that profitability. We can't save our way to success. We have to spend our way to success. In Quick Boost, we talked about the challenges in that market, but really the improvement from the prior year, as you can tell, it was a big loss the prior year, and it's a much smaller loss this year. That really comes from that Quick IQ product that they have, and the pivot really into that as a primary driver of revenue and profit going forward. This is the percent. So if you take all our overall profit, how did each brand contribute to that overall profit? So if you think of the whole pie as being 100%, and again, we've got some that aren't quite making the neutral line, so the math on some of these adds up to over 100%. The blue lines are where we thought it would be, so we thought the Luxor reseller brand would do 45% of the total profit for the year, and in fact, they did 83.5%. It's a huge, huge accomplishment, really, really impressive. So this just gives you a feel for how each brand is contributing that profitability overall. And the great news, hopefully, this is the biggest number that I've ever seen since I've been here for our all-company profit bonus. It's fantastic results. It's directly in line with what our overall profitability is. And every full or part-time employee that's been here for the time period gets this profitability piece. This is something that not all the EBSCO businesses do. It was started by David Walker before me, and I've carried it forward. I think it's important that everyone here has a piece of our overall profitability, and not just for the profit sharing trust at the end of the year, but a separate piece that's really focused on just how Luxor is doing and our Luxor brands. So it used to be paid on an annual basis, and we thought that's just too far away to think about that coming a year out, so we broke it into two pieces, and we pay one out in January and one out in July based on the first half and the second half of the year. So January paid out $730, which is hugely higher. It's on target to be about $1,000. That's generally where it was set out to start. So as you can tell, it was a huge payout this year. I think the biggest we've had ever. The people who've been here longer than me could answer that question, but I think it is. So really, really great progress. And as you can tell, we really crushed the profitability in the first half. And then the second half was a lot of really random up and down, but overall still came in just above the percent, 106% of what we thought we'd do in the second half of the year. Just really interesting how the months really go way up and way down. So, thank you. So thank you guys. You can probably tell my TV habits and preferences based on who's up here. I've shown a slide like this before, and I try to change it up, but I'm running out of TV shows, and some of them I can't show. So some of them are a little darker, or other types of shows that aren't necessarily for everybody. So thank you guys for everything you've done. It's been an amazing year. As I mentioned, it's strange to talk about it as being such an awesome year because so many bad things happen to so many people. But I don't want everyone to lose sight of the fact that we did some amazing work, and it's really, really, really an amazing accomplishment to come in at the profitability level that we had and the sales growth that we had overall. relative to what went on during the year. It's pretty amazing. It's impossible to repeat. And the good news is, as I get into next year, we're not going to expect that it gets repeated. So it's probably a good segue into 2022. Let me just check my time here. All right, we're okay. So 2022, we always have these three basically metrics that are kind of the key things that I want everybody to be thinking about as the year is going on. The numbers obviously change, but it's really top line sales, bottom line profit, and then the investments we need to be making to keep the company growing. So what are the numbers this year? 124.5 million, 12.5% growth from 2021. Keep in mind, 2021, we grew more than twice that much. So this should be easy, piece of cake, right? Callie's like, no, not easy. Not a piece of cake. But again, the focus this year, as was last year, less on just top line sales growth. Like it doesn't really mean a whole lot if we sell $200 million, but don't make the profitability that we want to make, right? At the end of the day, healthy profitability is the most important factor. So it's important that we make both of these goals, because per invoice or everything we sell to a customer, we should be making a healthy margin on what we're selling. And that's why both goals are important. We can't just focus on profitability, because at some point we might have actually declining sales because we're charging customers too much. And over time, that might help you for a month or two, but over time people will just stop buying and then you're in a bad place. So there's a healthy balance of both of these that I want everyone to kind of keep in mind. The weird thing is that we're actually predicting a 4.7% decline. You won't see that a lot on my profitability slides year over year, but we're making an investment in the ERP project, and when you take that out, we have a significant increase year over year. So what we look at in the accounting world, they talk about kind of normalized expenses or one-time expenses. The ERP project would be a good example of a one-time expense. We're going to do that now, and we're not going to do it for, I'd argue, 10 years plus, right? We're not going to have that investment that we have to make in future years. So it's important to kind of take that out and look at, if we didn't do the ERP project and we didn't spend that money, what would we make for the year? Because that tells us are we really healthy or not without that ERP project clouding the calculation. And then again, ongoing capital investments, same type of stuff. We don't have many facilities investments to make this year, which is great. We did Gurney 2 years ago. We did this office. Stan Steady's already moved. We need to find a new home for Quick Boost, and we're working on that. But we don't have any big build-out projects, which is awesome. I'm really excited about that. As you guys probably know, I've had a lot of time invested in our build-out projects, and I'm looking forward to a year without them. So what did I do? I started a build-out project at my house. We're getting a new kitchen, so that's, if I look frazzled, that's why. It's got nothing to do with work. Okay, so just some more kind of details. So if I look at this, we've got 7 key strategic objectives for the year. Number one, every year, always, will never change, is meet or exceed our financial goals. So as EBSCO or David Walker looks at how we're doing and he asks me how we're doing, at the end of the day, that's what he cares about. He leaves it up to us, and EBSCO board leaves it up to us to figure out how do we do it? How do we make it happen? They don't get involved in the details. David Walker doesn't tell me what to do. He gives me advice and he gives me opinions, but they leave it up to us, the leadership team, the management team, and all the workers to figure out how to make these goals happen. So that's the number one that we get from EBSCO. That's ultimately what they look for. Right behind that for this year is going to be implement the new ERP system, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, so I don't want to get into too much of that, but this is the most important project we'll do this year. It's more important than any departmental project that's going on, and quite frankly, we're going to put a pretty quick hold on other projects so that we can exclusively focus on this one. So what you'll see is not a lot of lean and continuous improvement projects, because our continuous improvement is going to be get rid of Sage and get a new ERP system in that can make all of our jobs better. So I don't want to underestimate that. That is the most important project we'll have this year. Outside of that, there's 4 or 5 other things that we're working on that are very important, but not quite to that level. Product sourcing. So many of you may already know, but we're actively investigating other forms of sourcing. We're looking at other geographies, so other places in Asia, Southeast Asia. We're even looking at places in Eastern Europe. We're looking at Central South America, Mexico. Every company is doing this right now. Any company that's tied pretty much to China and Taiwan has been investigating where else could I buy product. I just read in a furniture article yesterday that more household furniture comes out of Vietnam now than China, which is pretty amazing when you think about where that was even 5 years ago. But Vietnam just eclipsed China as more household furniture being produced than the entire country of China. And when you think about the size and the population of China versus the size and population of Vietnam, it's a pretty amazing fact. But this could help us in a lot of ways. It could have a secondary form of supply, so nothing wrong with our China suppliers. And don't get me wrong, every supplier we have in China is a valued partner, and we're not moving away from them. We're just trying to find alternate strategies around, is there a better geography we could look at? Is there a secondary supplier we should have in case one of them has a fire? Is there what if China and the US get into another tariff war and they start shutting down or bumping up tariffs? There's a lot of kind of geopolitical things that could happen. Taiwan, Taiwan, when we moved things from China to Taiwan to try to avoid more of the tariffs, Taiwan's currency has exploded. So we're paying more US dollars for the same product from Taiwan just because their currency's been inflated. It's the same product and really nothing's changed about it. The cost of raw materials necessarily related to currency aren't a factor in that either. So there's currency issues, there's geopolitical issues, there's a lot of reasons why diversity is important. And if we could get a supplier that's in our hemisphere or even closer to our time zone, think about if we could cut 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 weeks off the lead time. I'd pay more. We could even look at products that cost a little bit more on a per product price. If we can get them in 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 weeks faster, we'd have to carry a lot less inventory. We'd need less safety stock, we'd need less warehouse space, or it might avoid us having to start up a new warehouse because we can just have more just-in-time inventory. So there's a lot mixed into here, and Mitch's head is spinning just probably hearing me talk about all this stuff because it's a lot of pressure on him. But we've engaged an outside consulting firm to help us do this, and Mitch is right in the middle of executing that with them to have some kind of expert guidance of professional sourcing people outside our organization that help companies figure this out. So look for more on that in the coming months. NPD, so new and existing product categories. I think we've been focused on COVID stuff and then like smaller kind of bits and pieces and bites around new product development. And the team is actively focused on, okay, let's get back to talking about new categories, like net new areas of the business, big areas in terms of focus for office products or non-office products, and trying to think bigger again and getting back into that pipeline. Talent and organization and culture. So again, you've seen it a couple of times now. So we used to always talk about 100 million, and that's old news. So you'll see here, we talk about 250 million in sales. That's not a budget. It's just, there's a nice ring to 2025 and 250. There's that 25 in there. And when I played sports in high school, my number was 25. So I think there's something magical about all that. It's not a budget. We're not going to be a failure if we don't hit that. I just think it's always good for the organization to have a goal out there that's something that we're all pointing to that's bigger than what's in front of us this year. So there's some nice round numbers there. We won't reach that organically. We can't grow multiply over the years to get there. That'll have to have an acquisition or two, but that's something, as you can tell down here, we're looking at as well. Only other thing I'd mention, in addition to the acquisitions, is our omni-channel strategy. So if you have to look at what we're at the core really, really good at, it's taking existing products that we have, that we source well and we warehouse well and we have a really good supply chain, but getting them rapidly out into multiple sales channels and markets. So we can take a product that if it exists today, we can get it on Amazon with some of the best Amazon sales experience you could ever ask for, into a reseller channel in all different areas of reseller channels, whether it be industrial, school, retail, big box, all over the place. And we need to keep pushing to get them into all the other online marketplaces. So everyone's seen like Amazon is Amazon and the growth of Amazon, but Walmart is running right behind them. Wayfair and the others are very, very popular, and there'll be more. And then if you start to think about Europe, like what are the channels in Europe? Amazon Europe isn't really as big a thing. Everyone doesn't go to Amazon first in Europe. They go to whatever their country's version of an Amazon is. There's kind of broad line e-commerce portals in Europe that are really more country-based because Europe just kind of operates that way. There is an Amazon Europe and we participate in that, but it's not the first thought of, oh, I need this, let me look it up on Amazon and find it. In Europe, it's really country by country. We haven't even touched that marketplace yet, and it's a huge opportunity. So there's a lot of channel expansion and strategy that we can do, and our ability to take products quickly and get them out into every market possible is really kind of our secret sauce. That's what makes us able to grow the way we're growing, and that needs to continue. And I mentioned acquisitions. The only acquisitions we'll look at are ones that could basically run independently for 1 to 2 years from now. So if it's a company that's in trouble, that's going to need us to come in and help them figure out procurement and purchasing and inventory and take over their warehouses, we're just saying no. I don't even want to see it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want anyone here bothered with it. It's not going to be something we consider. We've got to focus on that ERP project and make sure that executes flawlessly. If we can find one that's like a nice add-on to us, but they can basically run independently and the leader wants to stay on and keep running it, and we can do it without a lot of disruption to what we're all focused on, then we'll consider it. And we are considering those, and we've been considering those for the past few months, and we'll continue to do it. So if you hear an acquisition's coming, or we're talking about one, don't think, oh my gosh, like they said the ERP was supposed to be the most important thing, and now I have to work on this acquisition. We're not going to be integrating an acquisition if we make one. If we make an acquisition, we'll probably put them on our payroll, so Jenny will be shaking her head. She's like, yeah, you will integrate a little bit. But we're not going to be running them in and having kind of like, let's get them on all our systems and get them on our purchasing and start doing NPD for them. We're not going to do all those things. It'll be a very minimal integration so that we can focus on what we need to get right, but take benefits of the profitability that company's bringing, and then hopefully have longer term synergy stuff that we can implement in maybe year 3. So just quick run through the numbers. So this is 21, so these are our actuals that we just finished that I just talked about. This is 22 budget, so this is the numbers that we're charged with doing this year. Here's the year-over-year growth, 12.5%. I think that's very reasonable considering what we've done. Also keep in mind that we've just done on all our brands pretty significant price increases. So even if you sold the same amount of stuff at 10 million, if you've done a 5% price increase, you've got a 5% of your budget already made just by the price increase, if you just sell the same amount. So when you look at this and you take out potentially a 5 or 6% or 7% price increase, we're only looking at a net of probably 5 or 6% actual new sales going to new people that we didn't sell before. So I feel very comfortable that it's an achievable budget. It's not a layup. The economy is starting to slow down, I think, a little bit, and it remains to be seen what happens with this Delta variant. But I think with the vaccination levels, at least in the US that we have, I'm confident that businesses aren't going to shut down. It's just going to be more nuisance kind of stuff that'll happen, I think, over the next 12 months. But I don't think we'll have a business shutdown. And I think this number makes the assumption that businesses, I don't think that I know that, it makes the assumption businesses don't shut down and that they stay operational for the year. So big goals, reasonable goals, goals that I think we can definitely achieve. And then this is what the kind of the old hockey stick slide looks like with this year in the green for the budget. So pretty good trend, I think. And then where are we going to be for profit? Again, I mentioned overall, we're expecting to go down in profit dollars from the prior year. So we're not expecting to get where we were, primarily due to the ERP impact. And when you take out that ERP impact, it's a positive number. And this is the change year over year from the brands. If you're wondering, like, how's Luxor going to go down when they were so far up? They were so far up, they don't have anywhere to go. They can't contribute as much as a percent as they contributed in years prior. So in the Luxor and Stand Steady case, we're not expecting as much of a contribution. Their profit dollars are going up, but the percent is going to go down as a percent of the whole, the goal. And again, we're looking for Suds and Quick Boost to return more from a profit standpoint than they did in the prior year. So this is what the profit would look like if you put the profit on a graph. And I put this little red box, so the actual profit is going to be without this red box. That's what it'll look like for the year, 4.7% decline. But when you add back those ERP dollars that we're spending, you can tell it's a pretty healthy trend line. And if you look at that trend line, 2017 was a crazy year. That was before me. But you guys had a great year. And if you take that one out as kind of an outlier, it's a pretty solid trend line that we've got going. We've also made some pretty big investments in people and the team to try to get us to that $250 million in 2025. So we've got more costs and overhead than we had in these prior years when I wasn't here and some of the leadership team members weren't here. But you can't get to a company of that size without making those investments in people. So, all right. So we'll do questions at the end if that's okay. we're going to jump into the ERP project, and Project Cumuli. Cumuli is around like the cloud idea, and Sophia will talk about that in a second. Before that, I just wanted to quickly just give you my quick thoughts on the project. As I mentioned, this is the most important project we'll do this year. I've done these my first 10 years working. I used to work and do warehouse management and ERP implementations for distribution companies. It's what I did as my job. I just travel around and go on site for 9 months and implement a company. So I've done this a lot, and I've seen a lot of what works well and what doesn't work well, and I'm convinced that we can do this. I have a question. How many people in this room, and maybe the remote people can raise their hand, but I can't see you. How many people in the room have actually been through an ERP project before, this full switch? That's pretty close to half. That's impressive. I was going to guess like 20%, so I'd say that's closer to half. That's good news. So for the people that have been through it before, I bet it's been rocky, right? Not perfect, hopefully not the worst project ever, and probably somewhere in between. For most companies, that's the way it is. It's not easy. It can be brutal at times. The time you have to invest in this project is significant, and that's why I put that as the number, outside of achieving our profit and sales numbers, this is the number 2 most important thing we'll be working on. And why is that? Because if everyone doesn't treat it that way, you'll get distracted with other day-to-day stuff, and the project will fail. If it depends on everyone sitting here and everyone watching in the remote offices to get their work done on the project to make sure that it's successful. And if you think about it, there's a lot that we have to do to basically look at what we have in Sage, figure out how could it work better in NetSuite. NetSuite's the software we're moving to. And then take NetSuite's best practices. So NetSuite might say, we're not going to handle dropship orders this way, we handle dropship orders this way. And our number 1 response to that is always going to be, tell me how that works, because that sounds great. We're not recreating Sage in NetSuite. The worst thing we could do is to take everything we have in Sage and recreate it in NetSuite and spend all the money and time and effort to create a nicer looking version of Sage, right? Sage has some good things. Sage has gotten us where we are, but I think we would all agree every day, most of you have to do something to work around, like, I wish I could see this way, but I can't, so I have to do this. Or I wish I could just look at this, but I can't, so I have to ask Harold for a report or get Sachi to give me a Tableau version of something. Nothing in Sage ever seems as easy as it probably should be intuitively. I think what you'll find in NetSuite is things are where they should be intuitively, and they've spent years developing this software with best practices in mind for distribution companies and kind of what I would call light manufacturing like us. They've looked at what those companies need to do for order entry, for customer service, for purchasing, for inventory forecasting, warehouse management, every part of the business. All of that they've looked at and said, what's the best practice way to do this? And we'll still be able to configure it, so we'll be able to say options like, how do you want to do your picking? Do you want to do it in one of these 3 ways when you pick an order in the warehouse? What we're not going to be able to say is, I want to do it the same way Sage did it, and it's not one of those 3 ways. We're not going to do that. We're going to pick the best way and run with it. With the goal being that we'll be more efficient on the other end by doing that, but it causes pain to get there from here to there. So why does it involve all of you? We got to convert all our data. All our customers have to come over. All our items have to come over. All our accounts receivable for the Luxor side has to come over. The financials have to be recreated. There's a lot of work for every department to get the system to where it needs to be. And then when we get all that data over, we have to start running the processes and write test scripts and then actually test everything to make sure it actually works before we throw the switch and go live. There's a lot of steps that have to happen. All of them valuable because at the end, that'll make sure that when we actually throw the switch, we don't have to shut down. So if anyone, has anyone ever been in a company that did the ERP and had to like shut down for a couple of weeks because it was a disaster? You read about it in the newspaper. Unfortunately, the newspaper only reports about those bad ones. So we've been in places, I've been in plenty of places where it was a good transition. The go lives are always tough. There's always a list of issues and there's firefights you have to fight, but it shouldn't shut down the business and it can't shut down our business. We have to keep shipping, we have to keep invoicing, we have to keep collecting money to keep the lights on and keep all of us paid and keep things moving. So we have to spend a lot of time to make sure we get it right before we throw the switch. And that's what this project is all about. Making sure we do it in a really safe, thoughtful way, but as quickly as possible. When we first looked at proposals from the providers, we had one that I think was 2.5 years. And I said, forget it. I don't care how much it is. I don't care what it is. We can't spend 2.5 years doing this. It's just too long before the first go live. It's like, imagine that if we were like in 2024, we'll hopefully be going live. It just doesn't work. It's too much time. So it's going to feel like a little bit of a sprint for us, but that's intentional so that it doesn't last too long. There's a thing called project fatigue, which basically means like, I got to go into work today again and work on this ERP project again, and it's killing me. We don't want that. So I just wanted to give you guys my take on this. This is coming from me. All the leadership team is 100% on board with this. We're doing this project. And what I need each of you to kind of understand and think through as Sophia runs through these slides, talking about the what and the why and the structure of the project, is how is this going to relate to me and my team, and then talk about that with your managers. So in the coming month or so, as we start to get organized to start this project, because it's starting in August. So we're getting into this, and I want you to be thinking about how is this going to impact me? What are the priorities do I have on my plate that I'm going to have to talk with my manager about? How do I do this and this? That's a discussion you guys should be having. No one should feel as overwhelmed by this project that like, I've got a full-time job and they're putting this project on top of me. That's 2 full-time jobs and I can't handle that and I don't want to work here anymore. That should never happen. And if it happens, come down and find me. My office is right in the corner and I want to have a discussion about it because that should never happen. We should be prioritizing with you, but your job is to prioritize with your manager. When you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like you've got too much, you have to bring that forward too. It's a two-way street. So I wanted everyone to hear that. This should not create 2 jobs for everyone. But what we have to thoughtfully do is say, how do I carve out 2 days a week or whatever it ends up being for you in your role to spend on this from what you're doing today? And that has to be a discussion with you and your manager. So that's the last thing I'll say, and I'll introduce Sophia. With 3 hours notice, has graciously agreed to do this. I told her, treat it like it's mindfulness and just get into a calm. I'm a participant in mindfulness. I'm not a presenter, so I don't have what it takes to probably make you feel comfortable doing this.
It's all right.
I'll throw it over to you, and I'll do the slides. Just tell me when.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi.
Are you ready to talk about the most important project we're doing this year? To introduce it, I would like to give you a little backstory before I read this, because it's too much fun to make you read by yourself. So we put together a steering committee when we began planning for this ERP project, and we offered the opportunity for everybody to submit what they thought it should be named. So what we have in front of you is something that came along with one of the submissions that obviously won, because it's incredibly clever. And it's written by Zach. Why cumuli? A 100-year-old wise sage once said, the path to the clouds is impossible to find on one's own. There's a fog around it, and it is a cumulus effort of many to lift this fog to see the path forward. This was written in an obscure ODBC dialect known only as Soda Mass 90, wink to IT. A famous oracle decoded that message and professed a sequel. Perhaps there is no path at all, and we are all already living in these cumuli. We just need to subscribe ourselves to bring a net benefit to society, giving the sweet life to us all. Introducing NetSuite. I don't know where he went. Good. This is our charter statement. This right here is what the entire steering committee put their heads together to decide was our ultimate goal. It's a strategic goal. It also calls out exactly what it is we are intending to accomplish with this project. It's definitely something that took a lot of effort and a lot of minds to put together so that we could all come to an agreement that this is our focus. I'll give you a second to go ahead and read it. Before we switch, I'd like to call out one thing. Surprise! Luxor workspaces. Everybody at home, here in the remote offices, we are overall Luxor workspaces. And as we move into this ERP project, we have to remember that that's like our family surname. That's who we are together. We all have certain roles for each different brand, but this is for everyone. Ready? So we are moving up, we are growing up, and going up to the cloud. We are going to do that with the assistance of what's known as a system integrator. And that system integrator will help us transition all of our data into NetSuite. The system integrator we carefully chose, took quite a lot of time, is named Myers-Holem. And they essentially take all of the steps and all of the details that we need to know in order to bring our data and bring our daily functions into NetSuite. And they lay that out for us and help us design it so that that transition goes in phases, steps, and goes smoothly. The system integrator Myers-Holem does exclusively NetSuite ERP migrations. So we're really happy about that. This is their thing, and we trust them. NetSuite runs in the cloud, and one of our goals is that we are not going to customize. We want to use NetSuite right out of the box, and we will build on it as it comes along. It has built-in analytics, reporting, dashboards. There's a lot of things that will be much more pleasing to the brain and the eye to see the information that you're looking for. We're looking forward to that. Sage will go away, but it will also stay as an underlying resource where we will be able to go and check things in Sage. We won't be doing any transactional exercises or data within it, but you can consult it for some time after we've gone live. And for reporting, we're going to keep focus on what NetSuite offers for reporting. And Tableau will be available for legacy reporting because we do need to also see things historically from Sage, but we're not currently planning on moving NetSuite to Tableau. This project will be done in phases because phases are so important for something this huge. You don't just decide one day that you're going to move and not pack your stuff. So we're going to implement it in 2 phases. The first phase begins now. Well, I guess we have 2 days till August, but begins in August, and it'll be a global design for everybody. And that's what is in the first phase. So the first go live will include Stand Steady, Stand Up Desk Store, Quick Boost, and our international business. One of the biggest things about the first phase is that we're going to be planning for all of the financial data for all of the brands and getting all of those integrations and decisions made at a geo level right off the bat. We do have quite a bit of integrations. So we're going to be tying into SAP, Salesforce, definitely EDI. Apollo is a homegrown solution that we have in IT for Data Hub. And there's quite a bit of work that goes into working with integration. So we're looking forward to that because it makes life easier later, and it takes a lot of design. And our second phase will be the global design for Luxor reseller. So Luxor's last, and definitely not least, but all of that infrastructure for everything that we need to make that successful will have already happened in the first phase. Ready? This is what it looks like from a timeline perspective. So right here is our first phase for the different brands, and here is Luxor reseller. You're going to hear me say Luxor reseller a lot because Luxor by itself doesn't say enough about who's who. We are Luxor Workspaces. Luxor Reseller is one of the brands along with the others. So that's something to get used to from a terms point of view. So these are the different stages in each phase: initiate, analyze, build, validate. This means testing. Convert happens right here, and that's go live. Now, don't be fooled. We are going live for the first one on April 1st, but it's going to be great. And we have a little bit of overlap here that I want to point out. Optimize means we're just going to do some troubleshooting, make sure that things are working the way that we want to if we need to make any adjustments. But you'll see this is April, May, and the second one also April, May, analyze and build, begin. So there will be some overlap between those two phases of the project. It's already begun. So we're assembling the team. That's going really well. As of August 16th, the analyze phase begins, and that's where Myers-Holem, you'll also hear us call them MHI, Myers-Holem Incorporated. That's when they will lead us through some discovery so that we can identify our business needs and how our current state works and how we want our future state to look. They draw up the functionality and process area teams. Many of you received a little invitation from me to hear that you're on the process area team. So if that's you, perk up your ears. We'll be heavily engaged in this. So you will get invitations shortly from somebody from Myers-Holem. His name is Dominic Ryba. He will be giving us a few invitations to those discovery sessions. I just wanted to bring the name in front of your eyes because you can never be too careful when you're getting something from the outside. That is legitimate, and it's somebody that you do want to accept the meeting so that we can work on this together. And then the build phase comes up, where the setup, config, and testing occurs. Integrations and data are loaded, and testing plans are executed and completed. Ready? Validate is exactly that during that testing phase, and convert is bringing everything over. Final configurations moving actually to production instead of the sandboxes is what they're called in NetSuite. So the different areas where you can play around and not mess with actual production data. We will have that availability like our test companies, but this is when we go live for real. And then optimize is hypercare, making sure that we've got everything taken care of, and if things aren't behaving the way that they were designed, that we fix that. To manage this project, I want to call out that we have some teams assembled already, and these are easily identifiable by who's involved in daily activities, who's meeting bi-weekly and bi-monthly. So our daily activities are those process area teams, and lots of you already know about that and are a part of those. Our steering committee has been in existence for quite some time now. So the steering committee will make sure, it's steering, that the project is on track and that their teams are executing what they need to be doing so. And the governance committee is making sure that things are on time, on budget, and we're managing scope so we don't start to move into areas that were not intended, and also dealing with change control. If we need to change design, that approval process. So that's a basic flow of how we're gonna manage this. And as we give more information on that, as the project continues, it may seem like it's a ton of people and a lot of meetings, and maybe in some people who haven't been through an ERP migration seems like overkill, but that's on purpose. It's on purpose because there is a ton of things to be aware of and keep on top of, and communication is incredibly important in this case so that we do it right, and we do it right the first time. My dad loved to say that. If you're gonna do something, do it right. Ready? So to keep yourself informed, I've invited everybody to a couple of different sites. Luxor's Ruby Slippers was formed quite some time ago, and some of you may already know it as a place that we post resources for how to get things done. Sometimes it's simple Sage errors. How do you fix that on your own? Luxor's Ruby Slippers now functions as a news site also. So posting news about project updates, that will continue. There's also a blog now, and you've been invited to a Teams channel for Luxor's Ruby Slippers that has a channel for the blog. That's the place to engage. Let's talk to each other. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have celebrations, you want to offer praise, that's the perfect spot to talk to one another. And our process area team leads are going to keep an eye on that very closely to be able to answer those questions. So it's a whole group effort. And of course, yes, the place that we're going to have all of these wonderful meetings that you're super excited about is here in the Waukegan office in the Quick Boost conference room. So that's going to become the ERP project team room, which is fantastic. And also, please be sure, as Paul had already mentioned also, when you're feeling that sense of this is an awful lot being asked of me, be talking with your manager And managers also be talking with your teams to just keep a gauge on what that's like, because change is hard. And that's a given, whether it's an exciting change or an awful change. You can have either opinion and it's still a challenge. And we want to support you through that change. We want to help you when you reach that point where you say, okay, yeah, I'm really excited about leaving Sage, but I don't know anything about this new world. That may hit you hard at some point. It might not. Maybe you're going to celebrate your whole way through. But if it does, give yourself that grace to understand that you're not defined by how you did your job in Sage. That's not what makes you valuable here. It's your mind, it's what you're contributing, it's your dedication to the team, to the strategic goals, and the entire group's hive mind of being Luxor workspaces. So allow yourself to move through that discomfort, because it will get uncomfortable. We can be excited as much as we want, but it will get uncomfortable. And as we move through that together, perhaps on the other side of change is complete renewal or total redefinition of what you can see as possible in your role, in your job, in your entire vision of the company. It could be. So we got to hold each other's hands through that and get to the other side of change. So we're excited, and thanks for being involved.
How good was that? 2 hours notice. Wow. Very good. Thank you. That was awesome. What's that?
I said I think she can do it in an hour.
I think she's... That was amazing. Very well said, Sophia, especially at the end there. Sage does not define how you use Sage does not define who you are. I think I would have never thought to say it that way. It was really, really smart. We're going to take a snippet of that video and play it at the beginning of every meeting for the whole project. Well, thank you all. I know how we're doing on time. Well, just at the end. All we have left is Q&A. I want to thank you all for your participation, for staying positive throughout the last, it's almost 2 years now, but especially the last 12 months, which is really the time period we're talking about. It's great to see everybody back and to be able to do this in person, and we're going to be back to doing these quarterly, so there won't be as much to cover. We're going to sprinkle in other topics. Normally, this is a busy one because we've got prior year results and New Year's plans to cover, so there's a lot, and then we had to add ERP to this. Normally we'll add the brand leaders, we'll talk about what's going on in their brands. We'll have one a year, usually it's focused on the new product pipeline and what's going on in new products, so we'll have more, less Paul Roach and more other people, which is exciting for everyone, including me. But if you have other suggestions for what would be cool to hear about in these meetings, please let us know, let your managers know, let me know, love to hear it. So. You usually find me sitting in one of the areas. I try to spend at least an hour or two sitting somewhere, so just come tell me what you think. But I'll open up to questions. Any questions anybody has? Hopefully you have some, so this isn't like the fake Q&A and hope everybody doesn't ask a question. Harold. For the people on TV, Harold usually has a lot of questions, but he asked he had his hand up before we called on him, so we're not singling him out. He volunteered.
Because that was not a planned project, correct?
It was actually. We had yes. The question was, how did the project and the build out here impact our results? Is that the financial numbers? Yeah. So we did have it planned. There was more. So EBSCO owns this building. So EBSCO, we're a tenant. We don't have a lease, but if you think about it, EBSCO is the landlord. We're consuming the space. So normally in that world, there's an allowance that the landlord gives for what's called tenant improvement, which is if you rent my building, you need this work done to make it livable for you, and I'll fund part of that, is usually the way it works out. Like in Gurney, we had to fund part of that, and our landlord funded part of that build out. Here, we got EBSCO to basically cover all the build. The only things that we're responsible for us are furniture, fixtures, TVs, the kind of the non-attached to the floor or wall. And even within that, there's a few quirky exceptions to, like, I think carpet or tile. Like, there's some weird accounting handling of things. Imagine that. So accounting has some rules around what you can and can't capitalize and roll in, and EBSCO has some rules about what they cover for tenants and what they don't. Long story short is I had planned this build out with EBSCO prior to the budget year. EBSCO corporate funded it So we didn't pay for, I'd say 90% of this. We basically were on the hook for furniture, facilities stuff. I'm trying to think what else. Like trash cans, you know, it's like furniture, fixtures, appliances, refrigerators, that kind of thing. So beauty of that is no net impact. The reality of it is they're going to charge us that back in rent over the next 10 years. So they basically calculate what did that cost, spread that cost over 10 years because that's their asset that they're capitalizing or depreciating, and then that's going to get passed back to us in a rent increase. But our rent here is ridiculously cheap relative to what we would get if we moved somewhere. Like if we were to find, I forget what our rent is per square foot, but if we were to go to an office space in like Gurnee or Libertyville or somewhere, it would be 2x what we're paying, what we're charged.
Still being looked into, or is that?
No, it's still being, I'd say it's on the medium to long term. So I'd say we're probably a year to 2 years away from that, but that's definitely on the horizon. I think we haven't refreshed that project, but the analysis was done that we're going to need a West Coast warehouse probably in the Salt Lake City or Reno area to best serve. If you make the assumption that our customers want 2-day shipping, if we have a warehouse in that area, that's the biggest coverage for 2-day shipping to the biggest part of the population that we don't have that to today. So that area hits all the way to Southern California, all the way up to like past the Bay Area. The only place it misses is the Pacific Northwest. A lot of people think, well, why wouldn't you put it in LA? That's where we're importing into. But then you only get half the country. You know, the other half is water where you're not shipping to. So you really want to have a circle that's maximizing 2-day shipping with a circumference around a population density. So we are busting at the seams with inventory. So that's part of what's maybe pushing that to have to be done a little sooner, but we're going to try to hold. We're aggressively trying to buy less inventory now and sell through the bulk of inventory we've built up during COVID. So assuming we can get that into a manageable level and keep it in a manageable level, we won't have to do that. We also have, and we're looking at right now, the Gurnee warehouse, we never put the last level of racking in. So when we built racking over there, we went up, I think 4 levels or a 5th. Yeah, we went 5 high, and so we're going to add a 6th. I can't remember. It's one or the other. We intentionally didn't do that because we knew we didn't need the space right away, and it was just spending money on racking that we didn't need right away. So we have the ability to basically add about 20% to the Gurnee warehouse just by adding another layer of racking around all the space that's racked. So that's what we're looking at now to expand that space. Good question. There's a lot of implications on that warehouse as well, obviously from a sales perspective, because you can be a lot more price competitive on freight with like big heavy stuff like charging carts to the West Coast if we had a place out there to land it. So we might decide to do that with a 3PL sooner than later. That's the only reason why I hedge my answer. Other questions? Come on. Harold, you got another one? We got one.
Sure. What types of complementary businesses are you guys looking at for acquisitions?
Good question. So in case you guys couldn't hear that remote, what type of other businesses are we looking at for acquisitions? I'd say there's probably 2 main categories. One would be an add-on of a product category that we're looking at that we don't have today. So rather than spending, like if we were going to, like one we're looking at is like medical carts. Like if we want to expand carts or a product line into medical, we're not going to get into like heavy surgical kind of stuff, but an adjacent category would be medical. I dug up and showed Callie, we had a medical, Luxor medical catalog in the early 2000s. Some of you sitting here probably had them in your desk and I didn't even know it. So we used to have a medical focused product category, and we would probably look to buy someone who had something like that versus starting from scratch and coming up with, okay, what are the 25 products we'd want to have and start building them from scratch. It just takes too long to get there. So what we'd rather do is buy to get a jump start into a category and then expand around that with our own NPD. It just takes too long and we don't have enough resources to do that. So that'd be one, is an adjacent category that one of the brands is looking at. And we've actually got a document that we're in the process of refreshing that is brand by brand, what are the desired categories? So if we were to look at going to acquire someone brand by brand, what would each brand want? And it's a little different, but there's a lot of overlap there too. The other one would be someone who's just in maybe a complementary customer segment. So I talked about the the need for us to be omni-channel and really expand into sales channels. So if we can go find someone that's maybe similar products to us, probably sourced, ready to assemble furniture kind of stuff, but in another customer segment. We've looked at some that are in like crafting, and we looked at some that are in different kind of industries that are a lot of the same kind of products we have with the same materials, like steel, desk frames, tabletops, in the same ready to assemble kind of state. That would be something that we consider too, because that would just be kind of an expansion of what we're doing. Not really additive, too much new, but maybe get us into some new sales channels immediately with a known name. What we wouldn't want to do is necessarily buy a direct competitor. That doesn't really get us anywhere, and that ends up being a lot of money and a lot of time and effort to basically take over sales that I think we could go out and win. I think we've got great sales teams and we've got great marketing people. I'd rather go out and beat a competitor than buy them. Buying them almost never works out unless you're at a worldwide brand level where there's brand alliance. So those would be the two that are probably our focuses. And again, the number one thing for the next 2 years, they have to be able to run independently. So if it's the current person running it is 75 and wants to go play golf every day, that's not a target for us. So, other
Do you have
questions?
any new furniture ideas?
That's a good question. What's new on the NPD list? Where are my NPD guys? Mick or Zach, new furniture stuff?
There's the modular stuff that you see, that's kind of the latest group of products that are coming out.
Yeah.
Warehouse-related furniture, so a lot of warehouse products, those are the two new categories that we're
Yeah.
exploring right now.
And the cubicles, the pop-up, the quick setup cubes.
Yeah.
We have a suite of desk type products for suds that we're
Yeah.
getting ready to, we're finishing up the design this week, and we'll be starting to get it sourced.
So for the folks at home, or not at home, at remote offices watching, so we got some modular furniture on the Luxor side. Suds has got a number of desk products and office products. And you mentioned some of what's the stuff that's out here? Did you say?
Warehouse stuff too.
Some warehouse stuff, okay.
Warehouse category.
Yep. And also some ergonomic kind of stuff that's been on the list for suds for a while that we're exploring.
Right, so yeah, some of the stuff is
Accessories, yeah.
into stock. Yeah.
Yep. And we're also, I think, just because of the success in Edge Power, kicking up the idea of more battery-related stuff. Edge Power all of a sudden took off, and I think with people looking to spread out post-COVID, whether it's at office, at home, or public areas, battery products could be a good, smart thing, and we've already got a huge jump start on the development and supply chain for those. And that literally just came up this week, so not much more thought to it yet than that. But we had a phase 2 for Edge Power that we had already vetted out pretty well that we can pick up. So, other questions? Brett?
So with the spike in cases, are we maybe expecting a spike in acrylic sales?
Good question. Good question. Acrylic sales are a weird one. We're selling them like crazy, and it's really slowed down. And it slowed down late spring and summer, probably expectedly as everyone started getting out and moving around, and vaccinations really took off. I'm hopeful that we do see another spike back up. They haven't died. It didn't go from a lot to nothing, but it's definitely slowing down. Stan Steady's seeing a slowdown on the Amazon sales of it, and then Callie's nodding that they're seeing it as well. Definitely not seeing the volume of quotes for huge, 10,000 divider kind of stuff isn't happening anymore. It'll be interesting to see. There was one article that I read that scared me from it was a newspaper in Europe, I think it was England, that talked about that it was the dividers were like a placebo effect, that they claimed there were no studies that showed that those acrylic dividers actually helped to decrease the infection rates. And I thought to myself, holy cow, if that's right. We have a lot of acrylics that aren't really doing anything. But there's the counter argument to that is, even if there's no science behind it, if it makes people feel more comfortable, it's worth doing. Like, there's a lot of things that there's no science behind in this office that people like. Do we need a lot of open space? No, but it makes people feel better, so we do it, right? Plants.
I found a bunch of stuff on OSHA, there is science behind it.
I'd love to see that. Well, you can write a counter article to that one. I'll find it. So be careful if you ask questions. I might sign you up for some work. But Brett, we should follow up on that, because it scared me when I read that article, and I haven't seen it referenced again. It said it was like the acrylic placebo effect. I was like, oof. So I don't know the answer to that. You bring up a good point though. There, with the Delta variant in my email yesterday, I just want to make sure everybody understood what we're doing. We're going to follow CDC guidance on everything. I hope everyone's okay with that. But if you're not, that's what we're doing anyway. It's one of these non-negotiable things. We followed CDC and state and local guidance all the way through COVID. I think it worked really well for us. It was painful to some people, but I think it's the right thing to do. And we're dealing with not, especially with this version, now that the vaccination's in place, it's not just us, but it's the fact that we might actually get it and not know it and pass it on to someone who's not vaccinated. And that seems to be happening at an alarming rate. So we're just going to go by whatever the local guidance is in the CDC map until we hear differently. And that's just, it's a non-negotiable piece, but I want to make sure everyone understands the why, because it's important that you understand why. Safety is number one. Mark.
Which product categories are you personally excited for?
Ooh. So the question was, which product categories am I personally excited for in 2022?
Yes, there's a tummy last.
That's a good one. I'd love to see where Edge Power goes with the battery stuff. We were literally, a number of my leadership team people have goals for this year was figure out a way to sell Edge Power. We have way too much of it and it's not selling to anyone, and we didn't know why. So now that that's completely reversed itself to the point where we're looking at literally renting 2 747s to fly them over here, until we realized it was $500,000 to do that, and then we decided not to do that. But so if you're ever wondering what it costs to charter a 747 from China, it's $500,000. So you can't get it here fast enough, and that's a good problem to have. The question now becomes, how do we stay ahead of that demand? And batteries are, especially the lithium batteries that we use, they're a controlled substance, and there's a lot of rules around how you can move them around, and everyone knows what's going on with shipping in the world these days and delays. So it's going to be tough for us to get a new product idea and actually get it into stock in the next 9 to 12 months, but we can push. So I'm excited about that one. I'm excited about Sidetrack. If you haven't seen it, the V2 is out and selling like crazy. They're still selling the first version of it, but the V2 and its new kind of pivoting point is awesome, and they've really turned Sidetrack into a family of products around second screens, and the thought there is that morphs into general tech accessories for working wherever you are, which I think is a great story for what's going on in the world today. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm really excited to see where the new Suds focus on office and desk goes. Suds is challenged on kind of meeting the sales growth that some of the other brands are seeing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Suds team's working on and going to launch there. And then if we can come up with something new in carts. I mean, carts are one that when I first interviewed here, I was like, carts? Are you really selling that many carts? But they're stronger than they've ever been, and no signs of slowing down. AV, I mean, it's just amazing. AV, utility, all categories. So if we can do something to morph that into other healthcare or other related categories, that'd be awesome, because that's stuff we know how to do really, really well. So, good question. Those are the best questions where I didn't have any idea what I was going to say until you ask it. Others. Tristan or Ray, is there any remote questions? I guess you guys could message to Tristan or Ray. They're up in the control booth in the sandbox. Marty.
Can you just talk a little bit about the Quick IQ for anybody who may not know what it is, just more specifically?
It's pretty awesome. So the use case was Lowe's. Quick Boost, they talked to Lowe's, and I don't know how the lead actually came in initially, but Lowe's was looking to launch individual devices for their Lowe's store members to check people out in the aisle, so you didn't have to go to the front of the Lowe's store and check out in line. So if you picture the Lowe's outdoor nursery and plant, outdoor area, it's like a secondary part of the store that's generally outside. They have just basically one cash register there, and the lines back up like crazy. So they wanted to have people with iPad or similar type devices that could actually go help you look stuff up, but then actually check you out. So if you've been to an Apple store, you see that, like you want to buy something, you don't have to wait in line at the cash register. They'll just figure it out and they'll swipe your card and they'll do it on an iPhone or an iPad. That kind of cultural shift in how retail does business Lowe's saw that and said, you know what, we could do that in our lawn and garden areas. We could do that in the lumber areas. If you've ever been in one of those lumber areas, and I've done this, you got these people that have loaded up like huge 20-foot lengths of lumber and stuff, and they're trying to navigate through the store to get to the checkout lines. It's a nightmare. So think about having people walking around who could just check you out, and then you just walk right out the double doors and be done with it. That's kind of where the idea came from to start. Was the Lowe's had the driver, and QuickBoost said they owned Brightbox. QuickBoost had acquired Brightbox before us. Brightbox was a company, it was a tech startup that was basically charging lockers, small little like phone charging lockers that would be on a wall in a restaurant, and they actually started in New York. So they went door to door in restaurants in New York, and they'd hang a locker on the wall, and it would have all this charging. The company could brand it. It had a screen, and the company could brand it, and you'd pick your password, and you could basically check it out. The company could actually charge you, so you could pay like $5 an hour to charge my phone, or the company could give it as an amenity for their customers. So you saw them a lot in the back ends of like restaurants and bars, like near the restrooms, hanging on the wall. Brightbox had a portal that would connect to all these lockers. So if you had like 30 of these across your like restaurant facilities, you could actually see how many of them are being used, if you're getting money from them, who's checked in, who's checked out, all that, remotely unlock them. So they had built this whole portal infrastructure for connecting charging lockers together. QuickBoost owned that, and then they owned all this high-end charging stuff, and they thought, you know what, we could probably put these two things together and figure out something that works for Lowe's. So it's a combination of the portal management software plus the lockers themselves for charging, so that the Lowe's store manager can look tonight and say, I've got 25 of these individual devices. When my team comes in the morning, I know they're all plugged in, I know they're all charged up, and I can actually assign ahead of time who's going to get which one as my store associates show up in the morning for their shift. They actually put in chip technology so that the Lowe's person can use their Lowe's ID and click on the locker. It'll open it up, and then it'll recognize that it assigned it to Paul, and that Paul's got that device until Paul checks it back in. So they've got a platform that's basically moldable now. It's kind of, think of it as like a vanilla platform that they could do RFID, they could do chip readers, they could do all kinds of technologies to allow open, close control of the devices and monitoring who has them and how many are charged up. The next phase of it is, where else could you do that? So retail stores, all kinds of stores now are switching to retail devices for checkout, but they've got leads that are like aircraft maintenance. So aircraft maintenance people have work orders that are on a device, right? So planes come in, they need to have the tires checked, all maintenance pieces done. The workers that need to do that work have to have work orders pushed to them on devices. What happens if those devices are all dead because the crew who left last night didn't plug them in? They're all standing around wondering what to do, and they don't have any way to figure out what the next work orders are, or how to mark them in process or completed so that the very expensive airplane can be put back into service. So they've got two leads with different airlines around maintenance operations and equipping maintenance people with devices and all that same stuff. They have to be charged. I have to know who has them. I have to know if at the end of the shift they got checked back in. And then think about the next piece, warehouses. All warehouses have scanning guns and equipment. So anywhere where workers have equipment and they're moving around with it, and it becomes critical to you making money or getting the job done for your business to have those people have devices that are charged, that's what Quick IQ becomes. And there's countless use cases once you start thinking about, like Amazon drivers. Amazon goes into my cul-de-sac like 5 times a day doing different deliveries. Every one of those drivers has a device. I don't know how they keep them charged up, but it's got to be a nightmare. When you think about how many Amazon, those short little Sprinter trucks are running around the world, every one of those people has a device. And I don't know what they do with them when their shift's over, but I know where they should put them. They should put them in a Quick IQ device. So that's Quick IQ, probably more than you wanted to know, but that's the genesis of it. And we've actually just yesterday had an offer accepted for a salesperson, an outside account executive whose focus is going to be on Quick IQ and developing the different kind of use cases for Quick IQ and driving it, because I see this as a huge opportunity. The Lowe's business alone, for just their garden centers across the U.S., is over $1 million in the hardware sales, and then we have a recurring software sale piece. So for us to provide that portal, we charge them an annual fee to use it, and that's a recurring revenue piece that we make money off that every year while they keep using it. So if you think about it, if I can get 100 customers doing that, and then recurring revenue from 100 customers, it becomes a really profitable piece of our business versus just selling hardware and then having to make any more money, you got to go sell more hardware. So Lowe's alone is talking about rolling it out in their lumber and other areas. That could double the Lowe's deal just with doubling the number of lockers per store. So huge opportunity there. Other questions? Any remote? Paul or anybody from Tristan or Ray? Any remote questions? Okay. That it? Going once? All right, thank you guys. Grab a bagel. Jenny got bagels for everyone and about 100 cream cheeses, so help yourself to bagels and cream cheese. Thank you guys.